Hello, this is Robert, and in this video I would like to discuss input failure. Input failure is what happens when the user types a letter or some other ASCII character that's not a digit when your program is expecting number input. So, for example, when this code on this statement right here for number 1, doing input on number 1, if I type the letter A right there, that would cause input failure. Remember that we can type a plus or a minus sign at the beginning and then only digits. So we could do a plus or minus and then only digits for number 1. So any other character will cause input failure. Let's just run this program the way it was supposed to be run, and I'll just use regular number input so we can see what it will do. Basically, it's asking for 3 numbers, so I'll just type 3 numbers on the command line right here. How about 1, 2, and 3? Okay, so the numbers are 1, 2, and 3. So that's what the program does when it's run correctly. Now let's go ahead and run this program, and I'll type an A for the very first number, and that will cause input failure. Okay, so we can now see that the output for this cout statement right here, the numbers are number 1. Well, number 1 was initialized to 5, so that's why we're getting the 5 right there. So if you initialize your numbers when they're declared, and if input goes into failure, if we have input failure for that number, it will keep the number that it was initialized to. So we initialized number 1 to 5, and so then when we said the numbers are number 1 right there, it displayed the number that it was initialized to. Okay, now let's take a look at the display of number 2 right here. It's this negative 858,993,460. And then for the double, we have this negative 9 times 10 to the 61st. Okay, those numbers will appear every single time we run this and cause input failure. So those numbers are repeated every single time. The reason why this happens, and it only happens with compilers that are running on Windows, Windows will initialize any number of variables that you create with this value. So if you don't initialize your variables like we're doing here, number 1 equals 5, then if you don't do that, as in this case with number 2, Windows will automatically fill in a value for you, and it happens to be that really big negative number. So with integers, it's that negative 800 million number, and then for doubles or other floating point numbers, it's going to be that really big negative 9 number, negative 9 times 10 to the 61st. Okay, so that is input failure. I don't necessarily have to cause input failure at the first input, right? So I could type a number here, and then for the second number I could type an A. So number 1, the variable number 1 will get the value 1, but then number 2 will cause input failure. Trying to read number 2 will cause input failure, and then input for number 3 will be skipped. So as soon as cin goes into input failure, then all other input is skipped, no matter what. So let's go ahead and take another look at an example of that. So if we run this and then I type 1, it's waiting for me to type a number for number 2. So then if I type 2, then it will wait and allow me to type a number for number 3. If I type A now, it'll go into input failure for number 3, and then it will contain that really big negative number. Just like in the first example that we did, if I type a number or a letter that causes input failure right off the bat, then all other input is skipped. It didn't stop to allow me to type a number into number 2 or number 3. It just used whatever value was there previously when it came time to do output on the cout statement. Okay, I hope that makes a little bit of sense on what C++ does when it encounters input failure.